Mandela, the rebel who refused revenge. What does it look like when a man has every reason to seek revenge and refuses? In most revolutions, power changes hands, but the pattern remains the same. The oppressed rise, and justice often becomes punishment. History repeats itself through cycles of anger and domination, where yesterday's victims become tomorrow's rulers. It is predictable, almost inevitable. But Nelson Mandela disrupted that pattern. He did not follow the expected path of retaliation. Instead, he chose restraint. But that choice did not come from ignorance of conflict. It came from understanding it. His life became a test of whether a nation could be rebuilt without tearing itself apart, and whether discipline could overcome the instinct for revenge. Mandela's path to that courtroom did not begin there. Before his arrest, he had already crossed the line that few expected. In 1962, he left South Africa in secret and traveled across Africa, including Ethiopia, where he received military training and sought support for the struggle against apartheid. At that stage, Mandela was no longer committed only to peaceful resistance. He was helping to organize armed opposition through Umkhonto we Sizwe. He moved under aliases, navigating borders discreetly, aware that capture was only a matter of time. This phase reveals something essential. Mandela was not naive about violence. He understood it, prepared for it, and came close to embracing it. That is what makes his later restraint meaningful. It was not the absence of power, but the decision to control it. In 1963, Mandela stood in a courtroom during the Rivonia Trial, facing charges that could end his life. The apartheid government accused him of sabotage and conspiracy, and the evidence was overwhelming. The outcome seemed certain. But Mandela did not defend himself in the conventional sense. Instead, he reframed the trial itself. He spoke of democracy, equality, and a South Africa where black and white citizens could coexist under the same system of rights. Then he delivered a line that would define him. He was prepared to die for that ideal. It was not empty rhetoric. By accepting the possibility of death, he stripped the regime of its ability to intimidate him. The courtroom shifted from a legal proceeding into a global stage. He was sentenced to life imprisonment instead of execution, but something irreversible had already happened. Mandela ceased to be merely a political actor and became a symbol one that could not easily be silenced. He was sent to Robben Island, a place designed not just to punish the body, but to erode the mind. Prisoners endured long days of forced labor in a limestone quarry where the blinding glare damaged their eyesight. Communication with the outside world was tightly controlled, letters censored, visits restricted. Isolation was not incidental, it was part of the system. These conditions were designed to produce bitterness. Yet Mandela responded in a way few expected. He studied. He learned Afrikaans, the language of his oppressors, not out of submission, but to understand them. He observed the behavior of guards, analyzed the psychology of power, and refined his thinking. Prison did not intensify his anger, it disciplined it. Over time, he arrived at a difficult conclusion. If South Africa replaced white domination with black domination, the conflict would not end. It would simply take a different form. Victory through revenge would reset the cycle rather than break it. What the country required was not a reversal of power, but a transformation of it. In 1990, after 27 years of imprisonment, Mandela was released. The moment carried enormous tension. South Africa stood on the edge of instability, with armed resistance movements active and violence a real possibility. Many expected a call for retaliation. Mandela held the authority to ignite that response. Instead, he chose restraint. As he walked free, calm and composed, his message was clear. No revenge, no civil war, only negotiation. This was not weakness or hesitation, it was strategic clarity. Mandela understood the structural reality of the situation. A civil war would devastate the economy, destroy fragile institutions, and deepen divisions beyond repair. Restraint, in this context, was a form of control at the highest level. He did not deny the anger that existed. He contained it, redirected it, and prevented it from consuming the country at a critical moment. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election, allowing black citizens to vote for the first time. Millions stood in long lines, some for hours, participating in a moment that had been denied for generations. Mandela was elected president, and with that came the most dangerous phase of any revolution, the exercise of power. History shows that this is where movements often fracture, where leaders turn toward punishment and consolidation. Mandela chose a different path. He formed a government that included former adversaries, stabilizing rather than dismantling existing systems. He reassured white South Africans that they still had a place in the nation, reducing the fear that often drives resistance and conflict. One of his most calculated symbolic actions came through sport. Rugby had long been associated with white identity and apartheid culture. Yet Mandela publicly supported the national team and even wore its jersey during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. This was not a casual gesture. It was a deliberate attempt to reclaim a divisive symbol and transform it into one of unity. In doing so, he demonstrated a rare form of leadership, the ability to absorb division without amplifying it. After apartheid, South Africa faced a dilemma that has destabilized many nations: how to confront decades of injustice without triggering further conflict. Widespread punishment risked creating new grievances, while ignoring the past would leave unresolved wounds. Mandela supported a path that few countries had attempted through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was not an easy solution. Victims publicly recounted their experiences, often in the presence of those responsible. Perpetrators confessed their crimes and, in some cases, received amnesty. The process was emotionally charged and morally complex. It exposed pain rather than avoiding it, and it did not deliver the kind of justice many expected. Yet it achieved something critical. It replaced silence with truth. It forced the nation to confront its past openly, creating the possibility of healing instead of allowing resentment to harden beneath the surface. Perhaps one of Mandela's most understated yet significant decisions came after his presidency was secured. He chose to step down after one term. In a global context where leaders often extend their rule or consolidate power, this decision carried unusual weight. He did not cling to authority or attempt to reshape the system around himself. Instead, he reinforced democratic norms by showing that leadership includes knowing when to leave. It was a final act of discipline, one that strengthened institutions rather than personal legacy. If Mandela had chosen revenge, South Africa's trajectory could have followed a far more destructive path. Prolonged internal conflict, economic collapse, and deepened racial fragmentation were all plausible outcomes, consistent with patterns seen in other post-conflict societies. The stability that followed was not guaranteed. It was the result of deliberate choices. Mandela's leadership demonstrated that discipline can be more powerful than impulse, and that restraint, when applied at the right moment, can alter the course of history. Mandela began as a rebel, challenging a system built on injustice. But what made him historically significant was not only his resistance, it was his transformation. He redefined leadership in a divided society by showing that reconciliation requires strength, not surrender, and that engaging with adversaries can achieve what domination cannot. He promoted the idea of a rainbow nation, not as an abstract ideal, but as a necessary framework for survival. His influence came from moral authority, built through sacrifice, not control imposed through force. In the end, Mandela's legacy extends beyond the fall of apartheid. It lies in how that transition was managed. He demonstrated that even after decades of systemic injustice, the response is not predetermined. There is always a choice between retaliation and reconstruction, between repeating history and redirecting it. Mandela chose the harder path, and in doing so, he did not just change a country. He changed the expectations of what leadership can be.